Judge tells New York State not so fast. Airbnb has had a downturn, and orcs have overrun my office. On today's Unnamed Real Estate Podcast. And we're live. Not really. We're recording. My name is Charles Dawson. I am the Associate Broker, Residential Sales and Manager for ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 126. And I'm recording on Wednesday for a couple reasons. One, the universe has given me multiple things to talk about today. And I was like, just this morning, just collecting all these things. Very happy little camper about that. And two, I have no idea what tomorrow is going to be like. And if you're smart and you don't know what tomorrow is going to be like, and you have things you can do today, get those out of the way so tomorrow doesn't blow up on you and then you're rushing. Life advice. So you might notice a change on this screen. I'll give you a few seconds. Can we see what's going on? They cut my tree down. I am not happy about this. I'm sitting here about 3:30 yesterday, minding my own business in my little green, lush cubicle from hell. And next thing you know, I see a party of orcs come into Fangorn Forest that was this little walkway back here with their axes and their saws. And these orcs cut my freaking tree down. And when I went out and said, "Hey, dude," they're like, "Sorry, we were told to cut this down. They can't open the gate." "What gate?" "That gate." "Why do they need to get through the gate?" "I don't know. They can go around." "No, they couldn't open the gate." All right. So I guess that means they're going to be using this gate over here and hopefully fixing air conditioners or whatever. Anyways, I missed my tree already. As soon as I turned this camera on, I looked at that and went, oh, wow, this is going to suck. And of course, this is going to make lighting even worse for me. So I don't know. Change happens. We can't do anything about it. Might as well just rail against the dying of the light. Well, let's continue on with what we do have going on. Like I said, today is Wednesday, and I'm recording early, ran the numbers and everything. But this morning, I'm just picking up all these great and wonderful news, and we also want to finish go into part 2 of why didn't your house sell, and go in a little bit more detail on when we're going to talk about condition. Right, but let's start with the national news, because national news, this is one that caught my immediate attention. Court, U.S. New York Attorney General attempts to force Section 8 on landlords, and the court says that is unconstitutional. And I might be the only person interested in this, except for a couple of attorneys and whatnot, but there has been a movement in real estate throughout the country, New York being a classic example, of stating that you cannot discriminate against landlord against your tenant's source of income. All right. And what that means is that if you're sitting there and somebody comes in, you have two identical offers come in, and you're looking at these two identical offers, and one of them guy, he's paying the rent out of his savings, and he has proof of savings that he has enough money for the next 375 years to pay rent at that and his burn rate living day to day. And you have somebody else that comes in with a housing voucher. You cannot choose cash over the housing voucher. Right. And this actually makes a lot of sense, because it is hard for people out there whose housing relies on a housing voucher to get, into places to begin with, because, some landlords do not perceive that as being a good a deal. All right. So this gentleman here, who's a landlord, who is now being forced by the state of New York to accept housing vouchers, gets himself an attorney, and he sues. And the reason why he's suing is not so much that he is being forced to use Section 8 housing vouchers and accept them. What he's doing is he's suing against all the imperial entanglements that comes with accepting a Section 8 housing voucher. Because Section 8 housing voucher comes with a couple stipulations. One, you have to maintain your property at a certain condition that the bureaucrats have decided needs to be maintained at. I'm actually pretty on board with that, all right? I don't want my government funds going to, slumlords, right? But the second one, and this is what he was talking about is you then had to open up your books and let the government go tiptoeing through your accounts. All right. I don't know why the government felt like they need to do that. All right. But they seem to think it was very, very important that they get a chance. So basically, yeah, let me see your checking account. So you spent $550 last month on OnlyFans. Would you like to tell me more about that? You don't need to know that, Mr. Government. But so he sued specifically because it is an illegal search and seizure, and it's mandated, and you don't have a constitutional right as a government to come in and search other people's stuff for no damn good reason. So, and that is what the court ruled. They said it violates the Fourth Amendment. This will probably be appealed. We'll probably see this go on. Asterisk, this is going to be Ray's opinion and not actual stated fact. It's like a lot of other brilliant government ideas. There's always secondary effects that nobody ever thinks of. All right, so I've said this many a times. All right, if your solution to a complicated problem can be fit on a bumper sticker, it's probably wrong. All right, so that was the first bit of news. The second bit of news, which I thought was really interesting, and you guys might remember that, at least last year, and I've been going on for this one for a while, is that if you want to solve the housing problem, get rid of Airbnbs. All right, Airbnbs take a perfectly good home, all right, and turns it into a glorified hotel room. All right. And that means when you go to wherever and you stay in an Airbnb instead of a hotel room, you are taking up a resource that could be used to house a family. All right, I think we all know my opinion on these things. So here comes some news reports on how well Airbnb is doing right now. All right. This came out, Real Estate Venture. It's one of those, think tank information groups. But the two that I called out, all right, Airbnb revenues are declining by county, all right? This is the 3-month average. Now, remember, with a lot of these things, you always have to take a little bit of that. Okay, when I'm looking at a 3-month average from May 2022 to 2023, is there any seasonality going on there? All right, but it is reporting here that in Phoenix, now Phoenix is on here twice. I'll explain that in a second. Phoenix is down 48% in revenue. All right, it is going from your average monthly revenue of $5,661 to $2,979. So that's really interesting. All right, that's 48% down. That might mean that Airbnb is no longer profitable. Right, especially with some areas having special tax for Airbnbs, all the other restrictions, your cleaning costs, everything, the cut that Airbnb takes off the top, that'll be really interesting, all right? If a lot of these and we were talking about some of these people, they made it through COVID. All right, COVID was hard on the Airbnbs because people weren't traveling. So let's see what's going on with this now. The second number you see on here is actually Pinal County, and I think this is probably because Airbnb probably advertises by geographic region, and each geographic region is named after its primary city. So when they're talking Maricopa and stuff, that's technically Pinal County, so that's probably where they broke that out twice. But even Pinal County side has dropped 42%. So remember, boys and girls, this is like the one thing I've always said could dump a lot of inventory on the market really quickly. All right, and we're talking for all you guys out there with your canned goods and your gold and your farms waiting for the big crash, right? You want to see a canary in a coal mine. That's something, I've always called out. Watch what happens with the Airbnb, and it's going to be very specific at some zip codes. Would not want to be holding in Scottsdale right now, because if this hits, Scottsdale going to take a hit. All right. Now, normally it'd be perfect if I could flip over to the Crawford Report numbers for Scottsdale, but Mike is still on vacation, so he's not doing that fancy chart I like to use. But this is an interesting thing here. I like to keep an eye on this and see what happens and whether or not we start seeing these Airbnb properties either converted over to rentals or converted over to sales. Now, when I mean a rental, I mean an actual year-long human beings are going to live in there for more than just the party weekend. All right. If we start seeing those houses suddenly hit the rental market, we're going to start seeing rental rates decline or stabilize in the areas that have a high Airbnb population. That's going to be fun to watch. If they then can't get rented, then we might start seeing those things sell. We start seeing those sell, then we're going to start seeing that inventory we've been screaming for on the market. And do we need inventory on the market? Yes, we do. Okay, I got my slide set up in one direction over here, and I'm just going to skip around instead. Let's go to the numbers, all right? Let's see how bad the inventory is. And I'm going to do this a little backwards. See this 50.2 right here? All right, that means we have half the housing for sale right now that we should, based on population size. All right, our actives this week are 11,337. That's down 123 from the week before. New listings coming on was 1,691. That's down 24. Houses going under contracts, more of them went over now. We're at 2,315, up 84. Closings this week were 1,634, which is really interesting because that's how many closings we had last week. I actually had to double check to make sure that hadn't changed. And coming soon to an MLS near you, 543. Crawford report numbers, we already talked about the 50. We have one house where we should have 2, or 50 houses where we should have 100. All right. And for the demand, we're at 82.6. That still dropped down, but not as much as we're dropping down in inventory. All right. Which leaves us at 164.5 Crawford report number going up. Still definitely seller territory, even with the reduced amount of buyers out there. There's still less houses to compete with. So what do we do with all of this? You know what? I'm almost at the point where it's like, I'm biased against Airbnbs. All right. And so, but that's something we need to keep an eye out. It's something we need to watch very, very intently. See if those things houses are coming on the market. I'd love to have the raw numbers of how many houses are actually taken up by Airbnb here in Phoenix. And if I thought about that before I just said it, maybe I could have done some research on that and figure out. But what would happen if all those houses hit the market all of a sudden? Ooh. That could make for a real interesting time. What happens if all those houses hit the market at the same time interest rates started coming down? That would make for a really interesting time, right? We're almost in fact, we are at the end of the second quarter, right? We are done with the first half of the year. We're starting the next half of the year next week, right? So let's see what happens. We're in the summer doldrums, right? But those houses coming on the markets in the summer doldrums, I can do this all day. So let's move on. You guys remember we were talking about why your house didn't sell. Right? And this is going to be part 2 of that series of why it didn't sell. And we're going to go over to, if you remember, we covered the 3 reasons. Last week we readdressed the first reason I gave of it wasn't properly marketed. Now it's the second one. It was not in show-ready condition. Not in show-ready condition can mean various things, right? And not being in show-ready condition also directly ties into what is your market like currently. If we were back in a buyer's market, all right, and buyers were looking at, just going all crazy and just being very particular because there wasn't a lot, there's so many houses out there, you're going to have to really tighten your house up and make it perfect. You have to be best in show, best on the block, right? Not just in price, but in condition. Right? Now that we're in the seller's market, sellers start getting a little loosey-goosey. Right? But remember, we are in a seller's market, but buyers are looking at emotionally more of an investment of what they were making before than now than they are before, because they're paying a large amount of money. And you will sit there and think, oh, I don't have to do any of these things, and I want my house listed at $375, and you throw it out there for $375, and then what happens is somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm not paying $375 for this. I've had that conversation a billion times. All right. So what are the things that screw up with a house not being in show ready condition? Cluttered and dirty. This is on you, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. If you have to occupy the house, that's number 2. Occupied houses don't sell as well as, unoccupied houses, mostly because they're cluttered and dirty, mostly cluttered. All right. This is going to turn buyers off. Remember, I've said this a million times. You need to get yourself out of the place so they can see themselves living there. All right. You don't have to completely vacate it, although it will help if you can. All right. But you do need to remove all the little personal knickknacks, pull them off the shelves, make the place look more and more sterile, for the want of a better word. All right. Carpets. Sometimes carpets will take a cleaning. Some carpets will not take a cleaning. Talk to your real estate agent about that. All right. Understand that carpets that will not take a cleaning really should be replaced. Right. So if you have a permanent stain on your carpet that you've been trying to get 3 different cleaning companies to get that cleaned up and it's never happened, let your agent know that. All right. So carpet cleaning. All right. We've also discussed about that if you have pets. I stepped in something last night. My cat decided to pee on the floor in my bedroom. All right. I almost wanted to charge that cat rent. Right. She's never done that before. So she's got to pass. Maybe she's an old lady. Maybe she jumped off the dresser, hit the ground right in front of the dresser and had a little accident. It could happen. All right, but still, all right, it's going to start stinking up my house here. Going to have a talk with the wife. All right. She wants new flooring. I don't want to put new flooring down with a cat that's going to pee all over it. Just saying. People are going to pick up on that. And another thing, I've noticed people like to hide cat boxes in rooms, like, oh, we're going to put that in the laundry room, or we're going to put that over here, and we'll keep the door closed. We'll cut a little cat door in there. Does not work as well as you think it does, honestly. And that smell of the cat box will permeate all the wood in there. And now you're trying there, and you got to get the real good paint, the Kills, right? Paint over that, repaint the whole thing, and hopefully that might take care of the problem, all right? Cluttered and dirty. That's huge. If you have kids, you need to train those kids every day when you wake up, you're cleaning your room. I know that's shocking, all right? But, because you don't know if somebody's going to come through to look at your house that day. You don't want to have to sit there and say, hey, you can't show this place, Mr. Buyer, all right, because I didn't clean the house up. You might be talking to the buyer who's qualified to buy your house, but they work, they work weekends, they work swings, they work graves. Right. They need to see your house at 10 o'clock in the morning. All right. Always make sure you're in position that anybody could walk in at the drop of a hat. Occupied houses. This is a very big thing. I can't tell you how many times I'm showing a house with buyers and the sellers want to stay there. And the sellers want to talk to you, or they don't want to talk to you, but they're just sitting there staring at you. You don't feel like you can have a comfortable conversation about the house. You're not giving the buyer enough time to be in the house by themselves and picture themselves living there. Just like cluttered before, take your personal stuff out. You are your own personal stuff. Take yourself out of the place. All right. Always condition, I never feel like this seller needs to leave when the seller is invalid or in a wheelchair or whatever. The room you can't go into is always a red flag. Always. So if you just think, oh, I'm just going to stuff everything into this room and then close the door, and you can't see in that room until we're on the contract. I've never had a buyer put an offer in on a house that you could not see a room. Never. I know how to write the offer that says, hey, guess what? Because you wouldn't show us that room, we're going to have a little thing about the inspection period. And that inspection period is we're going in there first thing before we even bother to start the inspection period. Make sure there isn't anything in there that we're going to get weirded out about. Garages especially on this. Don't just stuff all your stuff in the garage and just think, oh yeah, they just can't go into the garage. Garage is like the first place I go into when I'm looking at a house. And after a couple of weeks of me, all right, that's the first place my buyers go to, right? Because they're looking at all the stuff that's going on in the garage. All right, because that's all the stuff that never gets painted over. That's the hot water heater. You can check the age of the hot water heater. You can see the pipes going in the hot water heater. You can see if the washer and dryer hookups are out there. You learn a lot from garages, right? So don't think you can just hold out on the garage, right? Every part of your house has to be accessible when you're trying to sell it. Right? 2, condition. Condition is, you can surmount condition with the right price. It's not as easy as you think it's going to be, and you will save money if you fix it first on your own dime, instead of just think you're going to discount the cost and list a house at a lower price, taking the condition into consideration. You can do that. All right. I've done it. All right. And in certain circumstances, 5-10 years ago, when you didn't have the money to do that, it was understandable that that's what we had to do. This is the 21st century. This is 2023. And there's at least 3 different companies off the top of my head I can recite. All right, that will loan you the money to take care of these condition issues before you put the house on the market, and they will not accept payment or expect payment until after closing. Right? That hurdle has been cleared. Right? You just need to be able to go do that, and you need to know you got to go do that. There's a difference between, replacing the carpets and remodeling the kitchen. Right, but in certain circumstances, if you're the only house on the block that doesn't have granite countertops, you might want to start looking at doing that. Places will do that for you. All right. One particular case, nice little, covered awning on the way into the house and stuff like that, had a huge, like freaking 12 by 12 foot beam supporting most of all of this stuff. You walk around to the other side, completely eaten out by wood rot. That's something I'm going to notice. That's something your buyers are going to notice. That's something, that you need to get replaced and fixed really early on. All right. So condition. There's so many different ways to get the condition issues fixed nowadays. Now, that being said, estate sales, where the executive of the estate is selling mom or dad's house, all right, then you're probably just going to discount off the price or something like that. But if you wanting top dollar, you're going to have to get condition. All right. So if your condition sucked and you had your price list, point out there, like all the places that didn't suck, that's a pretty good reason why your house might have stayed on the market for 180 days. All right. Next one on this is going to be staging. Staging is, I don't think it is as big an issue as these other 3. But the thing about staging is it will help buyers define rooms. All right, and that's important. I took a buyer through 4 houses one day. Every, not the master bedroom, but every one of the kids, when we walked in, they were like, oh, this is too small. This is too small. This is too small. Now, I can eyeball a 10 by 11 square foot room. I can eyeball a 12 by 12 or a 10 by 10. And if it's under 10 by 10, then we're starting to talk sizing. But we're walking into a pretty standard 10 by 12 rooms, and the buyer's going, this is too small. This is too small. These rooms are too small. Finally, we went into a house that was not staged, but it was one of those occupied ones, and the kid's bed was right there with a dresser and a desk. And all of a sudden, see, she says, this is the right size room I'm looking at. This is the size I want. And I had to point out to her, we had seen that size the last 3 times. It's just because it was staged, she could visualize how furniture went in the room. So as a staging concept, if you have like a very weird floor plan or a room that's sort of weird set up, when the buyers are going to sit there going, where do we put the furniture? Leaving or having furniture in that space will help them, square that circle. So let me show you. I just grabbed this off the internets. Right. This is an example of what they call virtual staging nowadays, right? There are staging companies that will come out there and put furniture down, and then they pick the furniture up after closing, right? Virtual staging actually allows people come in there with a computer and will drop, right? These 2 pictures, all right, the right and left pictures are the same original pictures. They've just had things added to them. All right. So this is what virtual staging can do. And it also helps a lot with people trying to figure out, oh, maybe that room's too small. All right. Especially look at this bottom one. All right. If I was to look at that picture, my first shot is I'd be looking at these little corners up here, looking to see if I'm getting the line distortion from when you have a fisheye lens on there. All right. Because that looks like that could be a very, very small room. Once you realize that there's probably a queen size bed in there, that suddenly gets a lot bigger. All right. Now all of a sudden you realize that this room that you think might be too small for a queen size bed, hell, now that you see a queen in there, now you know you can fit that king in there. Right? That's an example of what staging do. Virtual staging is so incredibly cheap, it's ridiculous. All right. If you have, I would almost do them for every one of my listings. And I do them on every one of my listings where I'm trying to define that room perfectly. Now, there's a couple issues with this, all right? One, you need to get those good photos that we talked about earlier in marketing, all right? Marketing photos, even the greatest professional has a hard time taking pictures of ugly houses, make ugly houses look good, All right, but if you got good professional marketing photos, that digital staging, some of these companies do them both. Right, that will go a long, long way. So, hey, where were we at? We just finished up number 2 of why your house didn't sell. All right, and we covered, all right, that it was cluttered or dirty, that it was occupied, you had poor conditioning, poor staging. One other thing while I'm thinking about this, when we're talking about condition, is empty pools don't sell. Green pools don't sell. All right. You want that pool. The seller wants to look at a pool, all right, that will sell their house. The buyer wants to look at a pool that they can jump in after a hot day of moving all their furniture in. It's one of those weirdest things. Every house that I've ever sold with a pool that I'm on the seller's side, sooner or later, the buyer starts asking through their agent, hey, are they taking care of the pool? Are they taking care of the pool? And the seller starts asking, hey, can I quit doing the pool service? All right, can I quit throwing chemicals in this pool if we're going to close anyways? I'm like, no, don't be a dick. Take care of the pool. Throw some of those little white hockey pucks in there, right? Do that kind of stuff. Keep the pump running, right? Like I said, don't be a dick, right? Take care of the house. Take care of it to the end of the time. All right? And then when it's no longer yours, just do that as a favor for the other side, guys. Just be cool to each other. Is that too much to ask? I don't know. Maybe it is. So, you know what? 26 minutes in, which I'm pretty much bringing these things under 30 minutes now. Oh, I got some really good news. Heather King, long time viewers of this station might remember that way back when I first started, I was interviewing lenders. I interviewed Steve McCamey, the broker. And Heather King, escrow officer extraordinaire, called me up and said, hey, I got some free cycles coming up. You want to do that video that we've always talked about where I interview Heather about what escrow is, what escrow officers do, what title reports are, what a title insurance policy is. And we're going to get her on the show. Probably not next week. I got one more thing to finish up on why your house didn't sell. But we're going to record next week, and then I'm going to do some editing and basically cut out all the other things that, because me and her get talking and we just go to town. I'm going to try to condense that into something informative. And that's going to be hopefully in 2 weeks. And you know what? That really excites me. Heather King was my first escrow officer. No matter where she goes, I always follow her. Right. And that's because she's really, really good and she's one of the best in the business. Right. And she's just one of those really classic examples of when you got good people, you surround yourself with good people. Right. This is called working your circles. All right. Remember that third, fourth circle in working your circles. All right. Is your immediate family, your friends and support structure around you. Right. So we got that covered. Right. Remember the pools that we were talking about? One of the main reasons why you don't have green pools that you can't see the bottom is because they are a health hazard. Not just because of your vectors for mosquitoes and malaria. Oh, guess what? Florida's got malaria now. Right. How many freaking decades have we had no malaria in Florida? Well, they're back. All right. So blame global warming, blame, Bill Gates, whoever the hell you want to, right? Florida's got malaria now. So now we can start expecting more Floridians moving over here because we don't have malaria yet. And we won't if you keep your pools clean and your kids and your pets out of them. Nothing gunks up a pool like a dead pet. All right. And you guys have a really, really great weekend. All right. Talk to you guys all later.